When you think of a hospital, I bet a very specific image comes to mind. It's an institution that just feels normal, right? A pillar of modern life. But the whole concept of the hospital, a central place for healing, open to everyone, is actually a pretty recent invention in the grand scheme of things. So let's dig into how this institution we all know came to be.
You know, we take so much for granted. We just expect hospitals to have these super clean, sterile environments and to be staffed by professional, highly trained doctors and nurses.
And of course, to deliver a systematic, organized kind of care. This whole structure, it just feels like it's been around forever. But was it? For most of human history, if you got sick, your experience would have been radically different. None of this existed, not even close. To really understand the origins of the hospital, we have to look at the world that existed without it. For millennia, healthcare wasn't a public service. It was a private and often a very lonely affair.
Your options were pretty stark. If you were fortunate, you might be cared for by family at home, using whatever folk remedies they had. But if you weren't, you simply weren't treated at all. There was no safety net, no public institution dedicated to making you well. And this was all reinforced by the way people thought about illness back then. It wasn't really seen as a biological problem that we could solve with science and medicine. Instead, it was often viewed as a moral or a spiritual failing, some kind of punishment. And that perspective, as you can imagine, was a huge barrier to developing any kind of systematic healthcare. But then, something fundamentally changed. A new philosophy started to take root, and it began in the great intellectual centers of the Islamic world. It was an idea that would completely reshape society's entire approach to health. This new philosophy proposed that healthcare shouldn't be a private matter or just a question of bad luck. No, it should be organized. It should be systematic, based on diagnosis and treatment, and here's the most radical part of all, it should be available to everyone, no matter how much money you had or what your status was. Now, this wasn't just some abstract idea. This new way of thinking led to the creation of a truly groundbreaking new institution, the very first hospitals. And let's be clear, these weren't just places for the sick to go and be isolated like the hospices that existed before them. These were dynamic centers dedicated to active treatment, to the education of new doctors, and to scientific research aimed at actually advancing medical knowledge. What's really remarkable is just how modern so many of their features were. Care was free for all patients. Both men and women were treated, often in separate wards. These hospitals actually pioneered the concept of separating patients by their illness to prevent contamination. And, crucially, they kept detailed medical records to track a patient's progress and to study diseases. This whole institutional structure professionalized the practice of medicine itself. I mean, for the first time, doctors were systematically trained and had to pass tests to be certified. Practitioners were held accountable for their outcomes. This process began to transform medicine from guesswork and superstition into an emerging science. The hospital became a kind of university, a place where knowledge wasn't just applied, but also challenged, debated, and improved for the next generation. This model was so effective, so powerful, that its influence began to spread, laying a foundation that would eventually support healthcare systems all across the globe. You can trace a direct line that continues to this day. The model of the public hospital first emerged back in the 9th century. Then, during the medieval period, the concept was gradually adopted and adopted in Europe. And today, the fundamental principles developed over 1,000 years ago still underpin the global hospital system we all rely on. And this really gets to the heart of that big shift in thinking. The establishment of the hospital was based on this profound idea that caring for the health of all citizens isn't just a simple act of charity. It is a fundamental responsibility of a functioning, advanced society. It's a measure of civilization itself. So the next time you walk past a hospital, with its clean rooms, trained doctors, and organized care, just remember that it stands on a foundation laid centuries ago. A foundation built on the revolutionary idea that everyone deserves a chance to be healed.